Scenes of chaos and terror in Morocco, with people running for their lives as a powerful and rare earthquake shook the central region around the city of Marrakech. More than 1,000 people have been killed. Even more have been injured, and those numbers are expected to rise. There's a desperate rescue operation currently underway, extending into nearby mountainous villages. Searchers digging into the rubble with their bare hands in the hope of finding more survivors. Hello, everyone. I'm Natasha Fatah. You're watching CBC News Network. CBC's Dominic Velitis is in London, and he's tracking the latest developments in Morocco. Dom, what's the latest from the quake zone?
Well, Natasha, just to give you a bit of background here, this was a 7.2 magnitude quake. It hit just after 11 p.m. local time. The epicenter, as you mentioned there, was in the high Atlas Mountains, about 70 kilometers or so southwest of Marrakech. But tremors were felt much, much further afield. They were felt in the capital Rabat, in Casablanca and in Essaouira, and they were even felt in neighboring Algeria and in southern Spain. Now, the death toll keeps rising by the hour, Natasha, but certainly hundreds of people have been injured and killed. Local officials say many of the deaths are in those hard-to-reach mountainous areas which were closer to the epicenter and where people tend to live in older, more traditional buildings that are perhaps less resilient to natural disasters like earthquakes. And it could be some time, Natasha, before we get a better understanding, a fuller understanding of the situation in those particular areas, with officials warning it could be days before rescue teams reach some of them. Local media is reporting that roads leading to the mountain region are now jammed with vehicles and blocked with collapsed rocks. So that is obviously slowing the rescue effort down considerably. But there have been casualties in other parts of Morocco, Natasha, including, of course, in Marrakech, which is the nearest big city to the epicenter and which is a tourist hotspot. And many tourists and residents there spent last night out in the open, fearful of returning to their homes, to their hotels and guest houses should another quake strike, because there have been reports of several aftershocks since. The extent of damage to Marrakech, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is not entirely clear this morning. You may be aware that it is a place with a very rich history. Its medieval mosques, souks and palaces are a real magnet for tourists from all over the world, including from Canada. And we still don't know yet, Natasha, if any Canadians have been caught up in any of this. We have calls into the relevant authorities, to Global Affairs Canada, so hopefully we'll find out more in the coming hours or so, Natasha.
So, Dom, we have a rescue operation, then we're going to have to go through recovery, unfortunately, and then comes the reconstruction. All of this requires a great deal of support. What are we hearing in terms of disaster response domestically and internationally?
Well, domestically, as I say, the rescue operation appears to be focusing on those more mountainous areas at the moment, areas which were closer to the epicenter of last night's quake and where many of the hundreds of deaths have been reported so far. In fact, Moroccan state television is now broadcasting images of troops being deployed to help with rescue efforts in those areas. But as you would expect with a disaster of this size, governments around the world have been quick off the mark to express solidarity and offer assistance. Turkey, Germany, the United States, the UK, France, Spain and Israel are just some of the many countries which have done so. Even Algeria, which broke off ties with Morocco 2 years ago, has said it will now open its airspace for humanitarian and medical flights to Morocco if it is requested. Natasha.
CBC's Dominic Velitis in London. Thank you, Dom.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go right to the heart of the story and go to Marrakech, where we're joined by Peter Mercer. He's the owner of the Dar Zaman guest house in Marrakech, and he's joining us from that private guest house now. Peter, I understand that you're okay. The structure behind you that you're in seems relatively good, and thank goodness for that. But take me back to last night when the earthquake hit. Where were you? What happened?
Okay, I live outside of the old city in the new part of Marrakech. So I live in a 3-story apartment building. So I was in my apartment last night when suddenly the building started to shake violently. And you know, you don't practice for these things. You're not you don't know immediately what it is. So I thought for a moment, is that the washing machine doing spin? But I'm not washing any clothes, but it's so violent, and you can almost can't remain standing. But quickly I knew I had to get out of the building. I feared that the building was going to collapse. I thought it was just my building. I didn't actually think this is an earthquake. So I rushed down the flights of stairs out onto the street, and there were lots of people already in the street. And Moroccans are speaking to each other in Arabic, and I'm English, and I don't speak that much Arabic, so I didn't immediately connect with anyone, and I didn't understand initially that it actually was an earthquake. I thought it actually was just my building initially, and then someone said to me in French that was an earthquake. So that, and then obviously, the rest is history. I got my phone and started to monitor it online, but it was absolutely terrifying.
And despite not being able to speak Arabic, I'm sure you got a sense of how people were feeling. What was the general sense in the street?
Oh yes, everyone was scared. I mean, because these things have aftershocks, so everyone was scared. We all survived, or most of us survived the first one. At least I'm talking about Marrakech, modern Marrakech. But we're scared about the second one or a third one. So people were scared to go back inside their homes. In the new part of Marrakech, a lot of people live in apartment buildings, so they're 3, 4, maybe 5-story buildings, and the last place you want to be is on the 5th floor, trying to get out in a hurry. So a lot of people did stay in the streets talking. I mean, there was quite a, not really festive, but a good atmosphere. Moroccans are very friendly, so you talk to everyone. But people were sitting in the streets, sitting on curbstones and so on, and shops and cafes stayed open. So you could grab a table and have a drink. I'm talking about coffee or tea or something. But people didn't want to go inside to sleep. I did. After 3 hours, I went back inside because the reports were that there'd been 3 more aftershocks. Each one was less powerful. So I was reassured by that. So I guess took the risk, and it was okay.
And so that is where you live, which is in what I guess is described as New Marrakech.
Correct.
Okay, so we understand that New Marrakech isn't that bad. Describe to me where you are right now. Where is the hotel?
Okay, so I'm now in the Medina, which is the old city. It's the old walled city, where there are a lot of very old houses and buildings. Some of them made by with mud and concrete mixed together walls, perhaps without decent foundations. So this is where the structural damage has occurred in Marrakech. The Medina is pretty large, so a lot of it has survived unscathed, but there are situations where houses have fallen or huge cracks have developed in walls. I saw the minaret of a mosque close to the main Jamal al-Fanal Square collapsed entirely. Another one I saw has a big crack in it. And people are injured or worse in these situations. But in the main, the Medina has survived relatively unscathed. But I'm not by any means diminishing what's happened to some people. But today, life did kind of carry on as normal for a lot of people. I mean, cafes are open, shops are open, the souks are open. But there's obviously a sense that this isn't over yet by any means.
Absolutely. Well, the search and rescue operations continue, Peter. I'll just bring you up to date. I don't know if you've seen the latest information. More than 1,000 people have lost their lives as a result of the earthquake. More than 1,000 have been injured, and authorities anticipate those numbers are just going to continue to rise. So based on your knowledge of Morocco, how the bureaucracy works, the infrastructure, is the country well equipped to manage this? Is there enough hospital space? Are there enough first responders?
Well, Morocco does a pretty good job of putting together in these situations. I think the authorities will have a plan, and they will do a good job of, already the military's involved. There were helicopters flying from bases around Marrakech to the mountains this morning to assist with the recovery operations there. So I think that they will pull through, and maybe there'll be international help. I don't know. But I do believe that there's a lot of hands-on at the moment here in the Medina I've seen, so I can't speak for what's going on in the mountains, but I do believe that they'll do a good job to get us through this.
When you say hands-on in the Medina, can you describe for us what you're seeing?
I mean, literally, people clearing rubble and so on with their hands. Everyone mucks in, so it's not just the professionals, but everyone's volunteering. Neighbors, everyone is clearing stuff. I saw a taxi that's completely buried in rubble from a falling building. So people are lifting things off, and literally everyone's just mucking in and helping clear things away.
Talk to me about the situation at the guest house. I imagine there are foreigners there, travelers staying with you. They must be so frightened. How are you reassuring them?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to reassure people totally, because obviously nobody knows, if there's going to be another aftershock or if it's the worst is over. We've got guests staying. You may see them or hear them, and they've just come in. We had a lot of cancellations today for guests that were going to arrive today. They're no longer coming. Someone's cancelled for next week. So obviously people get nervous about these situations, which is entirely normal. But hopefully the worst is over, and the city continues. There you go. There they are. But it's hard to it's hard to reassure people, because everyone has their own personal, understanding or fear level and risk level and so on.
And how is information getting to you, Peter? Has the city or the state been good about making sure you all are up to date about what's happening?
I mean, there's an incredible amount of media outlets and access online to that kind of information. So, I mean, if you monitor, your favorite news channel, Twitter, and so on, it's there's a lot of information constantly being updated. So yes, it's easy to find out what's going on, and even for the remote regions, there's information constantly being updated on that as well. We've got statistics and so on. Yes.
And there, in so much of the world, there are those who are in privileged positions and those who are not. And for so many ordinary Moroccans, not only is this a natural disaster, a devastating hit, but also it could ripple into a major economic hit as well. The country's already had to deal with travel bans and the pandemic and a lack of tourism, a lack of travel. There's all sorts of geopolitical issues that play themselves out in Morocco just because of its location. Is there any sense of concern, you think, about what this earthquake could mean for the country's economy?
I mean, perhaps it's too early to say. We're hoping that this won't drag on and into a big something like the pandemic. I mean, Marrakech as a city, it depends on tourism, and there's no reason to expect that needs to change in the near future. I mean, flights are coming in, the airport's completely functioning normally. People are still enjoying the city and so on. Travel around the country, certainly south of Marrakech at the moment, is difficult. I mean, some roads are blocked. So that obviously is going to affect people's livelihoods that work in tourism in those regions. But I think it's too early certainly for me to comment on how that's going to work out.
Okay. Peter Mercer, I'm glad you're safe. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Best of luck.
Thank you.